And he's also a banker, and he builds banks and operates them and has over $1 billion in banks. And please give your attention to Mr. Buddy Roemer.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Y'all having fun so far? I've been many times to RYLA and have always gained more than I've given. So I apologize for that. But I've learned the hard way over the years that you learn only when you listen. And I have to speak. So I'll try to keep it short and keep it focused for your benefit. What is a leader? A leader is somebody who makes decisions. A leader is somebody who sets an example. A leader is somebody who explains the reason why. A leader is someone with vision and who can articulate that vision. Doesn't have anything to do with color, gender, size, or even brain power. A leader takes courage. Why do we need a leader? In all things large and small, nothing gets done without a leader. Without a leader, it's chaos. You keep repeating the same actions over and over, the same mistakes over and over, the same confusion over and over and over and over. In all things large and small, leadership is required to get anything done. Have you ever had a substitute teacher? In my days in school, maybe I'm showing my 70 years of age, a substitute teacher, nothing got done. There was no leadership. She didn't know the students, and often she or he didn't know the subject. There was no leadership there. So in small things or large things, leadership is the key. Now you're here for many reasons, but hopefully one of them is to get a feel for leadership and your role in that process. What does it take to be a leader? I think it takes self-discipline. I'm a diabetic. I've been a diabetic since I was 10. That's 60 years. I have an insulin pump that regulates my insulin. I take my blood test 7 times a day to see where I stand. I weigh 147 pounds, exactly what I weighed when I graduated from college. That's called self-discipline. You will find something, some purpose, some mission that will give you self-discipline. Because if you don't know yourself, how can anyone else follow you? If you're confused or not sure, who would follow you? Self-discipline. Second, I think it takes listening. You know, leaders are often judged by how well they speak. I know when I was a young man, John Kennedy was President of the United States. He was a great speaker. Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. He's the man that said that we'll send a man to the moon and safely back again in this decade. Wow. So communication is important. But I think more powerful than that is listening. Everybody in the world wants the same thing. You know what it is? They want to be heard. They want to be counted. They want to be present. And a leader's got to show that he or she can listen It's powerful. I just got through reading a biography of George Washington, who was our first president. And one of the leading reasons why we have a country. You know what he was known for? Listening. 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 Developed a habit. It takes a habit. I mean, you'd rather have your opinion out there than someone else, but you've got to start with their opinion. You've got to listen. And when I mentioned self-discipline a minute ago, I want to emphasize again, leaders don't get too high or too low. They have the courage to keep things in. I watched the soccer game yesterday in the United States in the World Cup. And my family's a big soccer family. My son, Dakota, went to Boston College and they won the national championship. He was captain of the team of soccer. And I watched that game yesterday and how America took that tie when they led with 30 seconds to go. Played 94 minutes and 38 seconds. And we're going to go into the final round of the World Cup. And then Portugal came back. One of the greatest players in the world, Roemer. They let him free for just a second. He didn't score the goal. But he punched a pass to a man in the box. In a minute. It was over just like that. We went from victorious to a tie. Now, a tie's not bad. You get a point. It's better than a loss. But you could feel the agony of that team. It was like a loss. And yet when they interviewed the captain of the team, he wasn't crying. He didn't whine. He said, great game. We're going to get Germany next. That's what leaders do. Not too high, not too low. His whole team was looking at him. And he said, what a great game. Can you do that? Finally, I think to be a good leader, you have to have awareness, knowledge about who you are and what the mission of your team is. I'll tell it this way. When I was governor, we had a fundraiser in Shrevary at a museum there. It was a fancy to do. We were raising money for orphan children. We raised $400,000. We had Lyle Lovett, who was a very popular singer then. We had a sit-down banquet at the museum, and people paid from $1,000 to $10,000 each to come to give the money to orphan children. And we had a lady in Shreveport who donated for our use that night these very fancy champagne glasses. And they might have cost $1,000 each. I'm making that up. I didn't know they were priceless. And she begged that we watch them like precious gold and give them back to her. So that night, every plate had beside it a champagne glass, and one thing led to another, and we had a very successful night. And when it was over, there was a group of ladies who had helped me, and we were cleaning up. And a lady came up to me during the midst of, 30 minutes before midnight. We'd been working for an hour getting things cleaned up, and she came to me and said, she was crying and said, buddy, maybe she called me governor or buddy. She said, we've lost a number of champagne glasses. Well, I've counted them, I've put them up, but I can't find them. And so we looked all over the hall. We looked and we looked, and it was late, and people just weren't very. And so I asked her, I don't know why I asked her. I said, how many have we lost now? And she said 12. And I said, how did they come? She said, well, the glasses came in, you've seen these boxes with cardboard spacing, and you put a glass in each of the space. I said, how many glasses came to a box? She said 12. And I said, we ought to be looking for a box, not for a glass. And sure enough, in the back of the hall, propping open a door, was a box of glasses. We found all the champagne glasses. Now, a leader has to have self-knowledge and know what we're looking for. What is the mission of the team? Only a leader can express that. So how do you do as a leader? How are you on self-discipline? How are you on listening? How are you on expressing the consensus of the group? How are you on these things? Well, I've got good news for you. You'll get better. Leadership is like any important thing. Soccer, football, baseball, classroom work, work in life after you graduate from high school and or college. Leadership is like these things in that practice makes it better. That's what this is about. That's what you're here for at an early age. To begin to get the skills and practice them. It's like developing those muscles of balance and speed and power and courage. How do you do right now? Not as good as you will. You'll get better. So stay with it. Don't get discouraged. Reach for big projects, big ideas, big goals. Why lead at all? I'm often asked that question. I mean, I've lost political races, I've won. Sometimes when you're out front, you get shot in the back. Sometimes when you stand out and you say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, it doesn't work. Leaders take risks. The risk is that you'll be laughed at or ignored or lose. Every leader faces that. George Washington lost many a military battle, and Congress almost voted him not to be the commanding general. Came within a whisker. So why do you lead if you risk being scorned or laughed at or ignored or losing? Why would you do it? I'm a fisherman. I love to fish. And I have 2 boys and a girl, and they're older now. And in fact, I have 3 grandchildren from my 3 kids. And 20 years ago, when my kids were younger, we went fishing all the time. When I had a break of 4 or 5 days, we'd go fishing. We'd go to Alaska. And I love Alaska. It's my favorite place outside of Louisiana. And we'd fish in Alaska. We'd fish for salmon. It's great stuff. When we go to the fishing stream, and we did this 3 or 4 years in a row, there was a little Native American village nearby, and we'd always go by and say hello to the chief and the tribesmen. And they were often training what was their transportation, which was their sled dogs. And I love dogs, and so did my kids, and it was powerful to watch them train. You know how sled dogs work. They're 2 and 2 and 2 and 2, and then 1 out front. And the master trainer would work on the dog out front. He had a small whip, got his attention, didn't hurt the dog, didn't cut the dog, but he would pop him, give him instructions. He'd show him over and over and over. He didn't pay attention to the other dogs. He worked on the lead dog. The lead dog. The lead dog was the key to the team. And I asked him one day, I said, I wonder why the lead dog puts up with all of your rules and regulations. And he smiled, this Native American man. And he said, you notice how the team is set up? Buddy, 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 and one lead dog. He said, the scenery only changes for the lead dog. All the other dogs are looking at the same thing. A dog's behind. Why do you lead? The scenery only changes for the lead dog. You're the first to know. You're the first to make a right decision. You're the first to pull the ship in the right way. You make all the difference in the world. And what you get out of it is the satisfaction of a job well done, a mission accomplished. You get a lot of things like that. But the most important thing God gave you was your mind. And the scenery only changes for the lead dog. Now finally, you're lucky to be in America. If you have the courage for leadership, this is the right country for you. You have all kinds of choices and chances here. Not many guarantees in America. You don't live in a country that assures you of victory. But you live in a country where victory is all around you. And the possibilities are endless. I know this is true. I go on mission trips every year. I'm a Methodist boy. And we go to different parts of the world. And my wife, who is a nurse, her name is Scarlett, and I went on a mission trip to Brazil. It's been 6 years ago now. I never will forget it. We took a group of doctors from Dallas and Houston and a group of nurses from Baton Rouge. And I was kind of like the political leader of the group. And we went to the Amazon River region of Brazil. We went to Manaus and then upriver 300 miles by riverboat. And we would go to little villages and the doctors would set up shop. And these let's say natives, indigenous people in the Amazon River, had very seldom seen anybody from America, and most of them had never seen a doctor. But the word was out that we were coming to a village, and the village would only have 5, 10, 15 little huts in them. And they were lined up from the edge of the village into the jungle to get fingers looked at that were broken, or to get splinters out of their legs that had been there for weeks, to get their teeth looked at. I mean, it was awesome. We gave haircuts. We gave medical attention. It was an extraordinary thing. And we'd get to the village about 5 o'clock in the morning at sunup, foggy on the banks of the Amazon River, and take care of the Native Americans who come. I mean, the indigenous people. Anyway, one day in one village, I would go in and say hello to the chief. Every village had a chief. And I would say hello to the chief, and I would have a translator with me. Now, they speak a form of Portuguese in the Amazon. And I know a little Portuguese. My translator knows a lot. And we would get along fine with the chief. Came to this village one day. People were already lined up maybe half a mile, 700 yards into the jungle. I knew it was going to be a long day, so the chief met me. He was a dark-skinned man, indigenous to the region, spoke a little Portuguese. He bowed, I bowed, we shook hands. He asked how old I was, and I was in my mid-60s, and I asked how, he said he was 90. small man, but erect, sprightly. And we had a cup of coffee, and he asked me would I like to go see where he lived. And we walked about 200 yards to the edge of the Amazon River, which was about 6 miles long, rolling to the sea. And he lived in a 12-foot high, single roof, one room up. And he climbed up a ladder, and I followed, and he had a picture from the National Geographic on the wall that was done in 1943. There he was as a young man, so he was 90. And we visited back and forth. And when it was time to go, I told him what a great time I was. I was glad we could help the village. And I asked him, had he ever been to a big city? He said he'd been to Manaus once. Manaus was about 300 miles away. Manaus is about 1 million people. They have a stadium in the World Cup. They've played several matches. In fact, the United States played yesterday, Portugal, in Manaus. And the Amazon jungle surrounds Manaus. So I asked him, had he been? He said he'd been one, didn't like it. He said, just too many people, not enough animals. He had a jaguar skin on his wall. He had a beehive out front that they had cut down from the top of a tree, and he'd laid it across his yard on 2 stumps, and the honey would drip out the end. He would collect it. And he's quite a guy. So as I got ready to leave, I said, well, you didn't like Manaus. If you could go somewhere else, where would you go? He thought for a second. And the translator, he gave an answer, and the translator said, he said he'd like to come to America. He said he heard that in America, every person has the right to become the leader. Wow. So that's what your training is for. Lead your school, lead your town, lead your state, lead your country. It's good to be an American. Thanks for having me. They're getting nicer and nicer. Are there any questions? Or? Yes.
Did the leader of the village ever get a chance to visit America?
I think your question is, did the leader of the village ever have a chance to visit America? Not that I know of. His wife was there, and I asked him how long they had been married, and he said 74 years. And she was 1 year younger than me. So they got married as teenagers. And this is my way of answering you. She was seated the whole time. And he said, my wife cannot see. So she doesn't go when I go out of the village. And he said, I cannot hear. The translator had to yell into his ear, literally. And I asked him, was that the secret to his 70-year marriage? She can't see, he can't hear. And he thought that was kind of a joke, you know. But I don't think he ever came to America. But what interested me, you know, Brazil, if you fly directly from Miami, you hit the middle of Brazil. It's just south of Miami, about 3 hours by jet. So it's not that far away, but it's a whole different world. And my guess is that that one trip to Manaus is all the time he'll spend outside his little hut on the banks of the Amazon River. Good question. Anybody else? if you ever have a chance to go to Brazil, it's really a fascinating country. It's about as big as America without Alaska. So it's a huge country. And about half the population we have, about 150 million. And as varied in color and background as America is, they really look up to it. Thanks for having me.